everyone, this is a Series of Opinions podcast. I'm KJ, my pronouns are she, her.
I'm Faith, and my pronouns are also she, her.
And I'm Moira, and my pronouns are also she and her.
And this is episode number 37, and we are doing a character spotlight from the 2SLGBTQIA plus community. And before we get into that, let's start with some recommendations, and I'm going to let somebody else go first.
I do not have any this week. I could not scrape any from the bottom of my recommendations barrel. I've just been totally loving on the same stuff I always do.
So that's okay. I will make up for that. Moira, what have you been up to this week?
So I actually didn't write down any either, and didn't realize that until we were recording. Yeah.
It's fun. I will put recommendations if needed.
I love that. I have been watching a lot of Criminal Minds lately. I'm still only on season 2, but yeah, I've been hyperfixating on that, which is
that's amazing. Oh, that's crazy. That's one that I've been avoiding watching for a long time because, like, that's one of those ones like I used to see my parents watch, and I used to think like that is too scary for me. That's like the height of scary.
Moira's watching it, so you're probably fine.
So I'm probably gonna be fine.
That's good.
It's definitely high up on my list of things to watch after, like, Supernatural and CSI.
It's also on my list. I'm surprised I haven't done it yet. I think it's just because I know how long it is.
Yeah.
Such a commitment.
Yeah. So I'm going to start off with a music recommendation.
Amazing.
Ooh.
I've been listening to this artist called Beth Crowley, and I'm a big fan. She has some really great songs. It started with Empire, and then, like, I don't know, I clicked on Empire, and I clicked on the, like, show me the artist, and then I just, like, listened to all of her music, so I really recommend her, yeah. And then I have a really brief TV one. Heartland did get renewed for a 15th season.
Yeah.
Yes, I meant to mention that earlier to you guys. That's so exciting.
It's safe to recommend that again, because it's not going to end on the weird ending of season 14 that was the opposite feel of a season finale. And then I've been watching a lot of movies this week, so I have a bunch of movie recommendations.
Ooh,
I love that.
Because, like, I usually, like, watch TV to, like, have something on in the background and, like, focus. But I tend to break myself, like, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna do this task until this is over. But, like, a movie is, like, 4 or 5 times as long. Or, like, sometimes 2 or 3 times as long. And so if I put a movie on, then I sit and I do a task for 2 to 4 times longer than I would if I put on a TV show.
Right.
I watched Hairspray.
Okay, amazing.
Amazing. I haven't watched it in a long time. It was very nice to watch. I've watched 2 of the Pitch Perfect movies this week.
Oh, those are also amazing.
I will be watching the 3rd one. I just stopped in my Pitch Perfectness to watch The Incredibles 1 and 2.
Oh, that's so awesome. I love this.
Facebook and TikTok both decided that I was obsessed with Jack Jack this week, and then I saw enough Jack Jack clips that I went, I'm just gonna watch the whole movie. And then I went to watch Incredibles 2, because that's where the majority of the clips are from. And then I was like, well, I'm not gonna watch the second one without watching the first one. When was the last time I even watched the first one? So then I watched both.
Incredible.
I love that.
Oh, and then I had another TV one that I forgot about, but I watched The Wilds on Amazon Prime. It's like a Prime original. It's about a group of girls who their plane crashes and they get stuck on a desert island, but then it turns out that there was never a crash and they're part of like a illegal social experiment.
Yeah, that sounds super good too.
It's really good. I also felt weird about recommending it because I didn't like how it ended, but there's a second season, so it's gonna have a chance to end differently.
I also forgot that I want to like double down on Moira's recommendation, I think from last week, of Olivia Rodrigo's new album called Sour. It's so good. Like, so good. I've been listening to it all week. There is even a song that Taylor Swift helped write, and it like samples from New Year's Day. So I mean, like, it's so up our alley.
Like the rest of the world, we are listening to that.
Yes,
all the time. My one this week is brutal. I've been listening to that one nonstop this week, and it's
amazing.
So good.
I listened to last night a mashup on YouTube of Trader and Burn from Hamilton. So good. Oh my god.
Listen to this.
It's amazing. It's just so up our alley, this music. And I guess everybody else's.
Apparently everybody else.
Everyone's loving it, yeah. It's amazing. Good for her. She's like killing it.
Yeah.
The before we go on, I just thought of people who may not be, I don't know, our age, may not be millennials, and may not know what 2SLGBTQIA stands for. So, KJ, do you want to tell everybody what that stands for all the way through?
Yes. Okay, so off the top, on Faith's suggestion, I am going to run through what the full acronym means. So 2S stands for two-spirit, L stands for lesbian, B stands for bisexual, G stands for gay, LGBT, T stands for trans.
You got it.
Q, there's some debate about what the Q stands for. Some people say queer, some people say questioning, some people still feel like queer is a slur. It's really up to personal opinion. I personally use queer as a general term for the community as a whole. Anyone within the community without putting a specific label on them, but some people still find that to be a slur and they find it offensive to say, and if someone tells you that they find it offensive, please don't say it anymore.
Yeah.
Please just, stop. If someone says that they don't like the word queer, just don't say it in front of them anymore, please. But if you don't like it, then some people say it stands for questioning, which is also totally valid and part of the community. I stands for intersex. I could have pulled this up, but I'm just doing it off the top of my head. It's fine. Yeah, so the I stands for intersex and the A stands for asexual, and then obviously the plus sign allows for anybody else, anyone else who wants to be included, just because beyond that, like, that's already pretty lengthy.
Yeah.
It's not really an acronym, it's an initialism, but so the plus includes anybody else who doesn't fit those, but is also part of the community. There's like a whole bunch of different ones, and there's lots of different gender identities and sexualities, and some of them are like a spectrum. Like asexuality is often seen as like a spectrum, and there's like gray sexual, and there's demisexual, but like also fall under asexual. So so that is what the acronym stands for.
Yes, good job.
Thank you. Hopefully this won't be like too long, but this could just be me talking for the next 10 minutes. So if you don't want to hear me talking about the history of Pride Month, maybe skip like 5 to 10 minutes and then reassess on where we're at.
But give it a good try. This is important. Yeah. This is an important monologue for sure.
And it's very important and very interesting.
So back in the 1950s and 60s, there were some LGBTQ plus movements, such as annual reminders on Independence Day in Philadelphia, which led to the Gay is Good slogan. But the big origin story for Pride comes from the Christopher Street Liberation Day, which was created to commemorate the Stonewall riot or the Stonewall Uprising, June 28th, 1969. So being part of the LGBT community in 1969 was not legal. None of the above really was legal. So the only place that allowed the community to like exist were usually run by organized crime groups. Stonewall Inn was located on Christopher Street, and it was owned by the literal mafia because New York in the 1960s. Wikipedia informed me that this was not a great place. Like, it was a place that people went to hang out, but it was not clean or safe to be there. But it was the only like gay bar in pretty much all of Manhattan that allowed dancing, and so that drew people together. So on June 28th, 4 undercover officers managed to enter the bar with something called the Public Morals Squad waiting outside.
Oh goodness.
I did some Googling. I could not find exactly what was covered under the jurisdiction of the Public Morals Squad, but I think we can use our imagination on that one. I literally did try and find out though, and I literally couldn't find like an actual like definition of what it was that they were responsible for, like what their responsibility was, or like what their mandate was.
We feel like attacking these like gay people or whatever people, and so I decided that you're morally wrong. That's what the squad is for.
Yeah, so usually the raids were like scheduled, or the employees were tipped off, because again, this was owned by the mafia, and organized crime has ears everywhere. But it was a lot later in the night than usual. It was like about 1 a.m. If there was a tip that there was going to be a raid that night, they just disregarded the tip as false because it was too late in the evening for a raid. There were about 200 people in the bar, and usually everyone would be lined up, and the female officers would take anyone who looked like a woman, and they would literally check their genitals, and they arrested anyone who had a penis while dressed in feminine clothing.
That's disgusting.
So that night, they refused to go into the bathrooms to be put through that humiliation, and some of the other men in the bar started refusing to produce IDs, so they decided they were going to arrest a whole bunch of people for not complying, and they had to wait for a patrol wagon to collect all the alcohol they were taking and all these people. Also, apparently some of the police were assaulting some of the lesbians that were present, and so overall just very, very tense and awful. So they started letting some of the people who they weren't going to arrest go, but those people didn't leave, and there were some people outside who were seeing all of this happen. And soon there's like over 100 people just kind of like gathered outside in the street. It is like 1:30 in the morning. But New York is the city that never sleeps, so there's people everywhere.
Yeah.
And by the time that first police patrol wagon, like, this is scene, there's like 10 times as many bystanders as there were people getting arrested.
Yeah.
And everybody was not happy. So the riots began when the police were trying to like push the crowds back and load people into the van. And there was a allegedly bush lesbian, may or may not have been Stormy DeLavery, who was being arrested, and she was fighting back against the police. Allegedly, at least 4 officers were trying to like get her into the van, and she was trying to escape, and they hit her in the head with a baton for complaining that her handcuffs were on too tight. And she asked the crowd why they weren't doing anything, and then the police like picked her up to like put her in the van, and the crowd just like kind of like went nuts and started throwing things, and people were escaping, and they tipped the police wagon over, and then by then there's like 500 or 600 people there, and like 10 police officers. So 10 of the officers, some of the people who were still being like detained inside the bar, a journalist, and this guy who was apparently a mentor to Bob Dylan, Dave Van Ronk, were all like barricaded inside the bar, like they couldn't get out because of all the people in the street were mad at them. So people started chucking things through the windows. I hear a lot. I've been hearing a lot this year that people think it was Marsha P. Johnson who threw a brick through the window. Marsha herself says that she wasn't there until like at least 2, so like she wasn't there right away.
Right.
She heard about this happening and like she like went to go get some other people, and like she was present, but she wasn't there at the beginning, so it probably was not her who threw the brick through the window. It's probably not true, but she did do some sick shit on night 2 of the riots, so we can definitely still appreciate her. People started chucking things through the windows, trying to knock down the doors with a parking meter that they pulled out of the ground, just generally fighting back. The tactical police force arrived to get the officers out of the building and away from the very angry crowd, but they were really, really mad that the gays were forcing police into retreats and like barricading themselves into buildings, because that wasn't supposed to happen to the police from anybody, but especially not from the gays. You know who else wasn't happy though? The people who were being arrested for being gay and for being trans.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So the police continued to use force against the crowd, who refused to disperse. They kept like running away and then like circling back, and like that went on for about like 3 hours, from like about 1:20 in the morning to about 4 a.m. And then the next day, people were like talking. Everyone was like, this crazy thing happened. And then that night, everybody like went back, and like Stonewall had like literally caught on fire the night before because they had thrown like burning trash in through the broken windows. So like it wasn't like open really, I don't think. But people gathered there to protest, and then I think there was also probably people counter protesting that protest, and the police were there. And again, it got really violent. There was fighting in the streets, and then there was some altercations following like for the next several days, and like a push from a lot of people that they should own their own businesses so they don't have to go to these mafia run businesses like Stonewall. The Manishin Society, who were doing those annual reminder marches, were now being seen as like too conservative and too passive. Like they were doing these marches, but like you weren't allowed to hold hands with your same-sex partners at the marches. Like they were like, that's too much, like we don't want people to actually see anything. Even holding hands, which is totally innocent and family friendly, was like not allowed. People were starting to feel empowered to do more. So the Gay Liberation Front was formed on June 28th, 1970, which was the first anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising. They had the Christopher Street Liberation Day, and they had some similar gatherings in other cities, and the number of participants in these cities and the number of cities that were having these marches began to grow, as did the number of LGBTQ organizations, and they worked alongside a lot of other civil rights organizations, anti-police movements, people who were protesting for racial equality. They were all really natural allies to one another, so they were all working together, because the 1960s, that's what people were doing.
Yeah.
And so while Pride does sometimes seem to people like a party or like something we don't really need, we do need it. Our trans community members' rights are under attack actively right now. Our Black community members are under attack. I pulled some statistics here about the Two-Spirit LGBTQIA community, and I did just want to say, in Canada, I'm seeing more of this like 2S in front of the LGBTQIA, and that stands for Two-Spirit. It's a identity that is like reserved for certain Indigenous communities, and we put it in front of the LGBTQ because the Indigenous people, they were here first, and so we should be putting them first, and that's why it goes ahead instead of at the end. So same-sex marriages are still only legal in 23 countries. There are still 68 nations where it's illegal and 11 where homosexuality is punishable by death. And legal does not mean equal or easy or particularly safe. It just means not a criminal offense.
Yeah.
And all of the countries that have legalized gay marriage have done so in the last 20 years, literally less time than we've all been alive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Conversion therapy is still legal in all countries except for 3, and very, very few countries allow same-sex couples to adopt children. 2021 is already a record-breaking year for anti-trans trans legislation in the U.S. and globally. 33 states have introduced over 117 bills limiting access to healthcare, bathrooms, participation in sports, mostly aimed at limiting the rights of trans youth just in the U.S. And I didn't even look at Canada because I couldn't. I was so angry by the time I got to this point of my rant that I literally just had to stop. But those are just a few of the reasons why it's important. And there's so many other identities beyond that experience phobia from the general community and from inside the LGBTQ plus community. Is not a harmonious community. Not everyone feels safe identifying within the community, even if they might personally identify as something that falls under the community. There's lots of people who don't find comfort in the community. They don't feel safe there. They don't feel included. So that's something we all really need to work on. Mm-hmm. And, Pride is a little bit of a party sometimes, especially here in North America. But, we also do need to just remember what it's really about as well.
Yeah, totally.
This is Ed and KJ with a little tiny bright spot edit. In case it's been a little while since you took social studies or you're not from Canada, laws have to go through the House of Commons and then they have to go through the Senate. And just this week, literally this week before this episode is coming out, the House of Commons voted to ban conversion therapy federally in Canada. So we can add Canada to the list, which is great news. But bad news is that the vote wasn't unanimous. It was 263 to 63, and the 63 that voted against it and wanted to not ban it. Unfortunately, one of those 63 people is the MP that represents the area that the three of us are from, where we all live and grew up together. So we don't love that, but we're so excited that we are able to add Canada to the list of countries that is banning conversion therapy.
Anyway, does anyone else want to go first with their character?
Sure, I can go first. That was great. I'm really glad that you did that. It's good, base standard. There are some things I didn't know about. I didn't know about the 2S in front of the LGBTQIA+. I thought that is really interesting.
Yeah, I've really just started using it in the last couple of years, and I just took a Indigenous Legal Studies course as well, so that helps a little bit with that, because obviously I'm not part of their community.
Yeah, well, that was super interesting. I'm really glad that you did that. It's really important. For my person/character that I'm spotlighting is Laverne Cox. She's not character per se, it's a person. She's a person, but I talk a little bit about her character on Orange is the New Black, but I just thought that she, as a person, outside of her role, was so inspiring that I wanted to do a history of her. My sources are biography.com and IMDb, and then also lavernecox.com. I highly recommend that one. She has a big kind of about section where a big portion of it is written from her perspective, and it's really, really interesting. And of course, it's always best to hear these experiences and these feelings right from the person themselves.
Yeah.
Laverne Cox was born on May 29, 1972 in Mobile, Alabama. She and her twin brother were raised by their single mother, Gloria, who worked as a teacher. She endured horrible bullying and lack of support from her peers and teachers growing up. A teacher told her mother, "Your son is going to end up in New Orleans in a dress if we don't get him in therapy right away." Yikes. At 11, she attempted suicide, and she credits moved to study dance at the Alabama School of Fine Arts, which is a boarding school, with saving her life. Here is where she really began seriously studying classical ballet. She graduated and accepted a dance scholarship to Indiana University at Bloomington and eventually transferred to Marymount Manhattan College in New York City, where she graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in dance and then started to begin acting. Part of the one thing that I find so interesting and fascinating about her is she's got all of this big long list of education and all this different experience. She's been so many different places, and it's something I had no idea about her at all. She's always been this celebrity that I quote unquote celebrity, figure that I knew of, and I was always really just I felt myself drawn to her. I think her confidence is so amazing. Well, I have not seen Orange is the New Black, but I knew that that's kind of what she's most known for. So during college, Laverne went from identifying as gender non-conforming to being more and more femme. Soon she started her medical transition and began living and identifying as female. In 2008, she appeared on Law & Order, SVU, before becoming one of the contestants on a reality series, I Want to Work for Diddy. Other roles followed in TV and indie films, as well as on another reality program, Transform Me, in 2010, before she landed her big breakthrough role on Orange is the New Black. So a little bit about her in the Netflix series Orange is the New Black. Laverne plays Sophie Burset, who's a transgender woman sent to prison for credit card fraud committed to fund her gender reassignment surgery, and she becomes the hairdresser for many of the inmates. Her role in Orange is the New Black provided her this platform to speak on the rights of trans people. In an interview, she stated, Sophia is written as a multi-dimensional character who the audience can really empathize with. All of a sudden, they're empathizing with a real trans person, and for trans folk out there who need representation of people who are like them and of their experiences, that's when it becomes really important. And then a little bit about some of her other accomplishments and awards. She's got a huge list. I definitely recommend looking especially at her website. She's done so many amazing things, and she's got so many different talents. It's amazing. Orange is the New Black led to her becoming the first openly transgender actress to be nominated for a Primetime Acting Emmy, and made her the first trans woman of color to have a leading role on a mainstream scripted television series. Laverne is also an Emmy-winning producer, and her last documentary, Disclosure, which she executive produced, was named one of the 100 best documentaries of all time by Vogue. Disclosure gives this unprecedented, groundbreaking look at the depiction of transgender characters throughout the history of film and TV. She is also the executive producer behind the documentaries The T Word, which came out in 2014, which follows the lives of several trans youth, and Free CC, which came out in 2016, which tells the stories of an imprisoned trans woman. For The T Word, she won an Emmy, making her the first transgender woman to win for an executive producer role. She also works as a trans rights advocate, hosting her own column on the Huffington Post, where, among other write-ups and amazing articles that she's written an incredible essay on gender expression and oppression, which I will send KJ the link to for our description. It's really amazing. It's really interesting. Definitely recommend reading that. She is the first openly transgender person to appear on the covers of Time magazine, British Vogue, Cosmopolitan magazine, and Essence magazines, among many others. She was named one of Glamour magazine's 2014 Women of the Year. She also proudly holds 2 SAG awards, winning them with her Orange is the New Black cast for outstanding performance by an ensemble in a comedy series. There's a lot of jargon, but I think it really paints a picture of all her different talents of all.
Yeah, she's
all
just winning shit left and right.
Totally,
she just sounds amazing.
She's killing it. She's amazing. So, kind of to wrap it up a little bit, I chose a few quotes from her, because like I said, I think it's important to hear experiences and thoughts and, just experiences straight from the person. So here's just a couple quotes from her. For me, the transgender thing is the reality of my life. It's the reality of my existence, and it's something that I've come to believe is beautiful about me. And the next quote, beyond truth and trans, one of the big T's for me would probably be trying. Because at the end of the day, we can think whatever, but it's what are we going to do? Because as long as we're trying, I think that goes a long way. Next quote, by doing the work to love ourselves more, I believe we love each other a little better. And then the last one, everyone is insecure. I think really it comes from a desire to want to be in control of how you're represented. I think she's done so much good. It was so amazing doing this research. She's done so much for her community and the representation, and she has so many great articles and things that she's written about loving yourself and being yourself, which is something everyone can take something from, and she's just a really amazing person in general.
Yeah, I love all of those quotes. Those were all great quotes.
Yes, she has a lot of good ones. I just freaking love her. I don't ever remember what I even know her from. It's just someone that I've always known of and liked a lot, and have kind of in my peripheral almost kind of followed her through her career, especially since Orange is the New Black. Even though I've never seen Orange is the New Black, I just think her confidence is so amazing. It's just amazing who she is and what she does.
I feel we're being really quiet when everyone's talking this week. We're not usually doing, we're not interrupting the way we usually do.
Yeah.
I think it's just because we just, want to hear about all of these amazing people.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to talk a little bit more about what KJ talked about in episode 19, which was so long ago, I'm realizing. I didn't think it was that long ago.
Yeah, so I really use a refresher on that.
Yeah, I had to scroll back in my notes real quick just to see what that was.
But just on why media representation is so important, because it's not only like knowing what other people are and how other groups of people are in the world that you may not interact with, but also discovering things about yourself that you might not know, and that's very important. Like, I read a lot of books as a child and didn't watch as much TV, so I tried to think of books that had a main character that wasn't a white male or female that I read as a young adult, and the first one that I came up with was Heroes of Olympus, and I read that in 9th grade, and I'm like, I think I should have been reading about people's and different life experiences younger than 14 years old.
Yeah,
because they didn't know anything, and it's just integrated into young children's lives so that it's not a learning curve, it's just something they're used to, I think is very, very important.
Yeah.
And I started with one person that I wanted to talk about and ended up talking about 3, so...
Yeah, that's okay. I'm excited to hear about all 3.
The reason I wanted to, reiterate the importance of media representation is because I actually figured out that I was bisexual from being represented on TV and seeing a bisexual character.
Yeah, I think that's amazing.
I'm going to start with her.
Amazing.
I want to talk about Sarah Lance from the TV show Arrow and then Legends of Tomorrow, because she got a spin-off show. So she's played by Katie Lotz, who has greatly disappointed so many people in the LGBTQ plus community.
Oh, that's disappointing. That's not where I thought that was going.
Oh.
No, I'm starting off. People need to know that she has been very transphobic and supporting transphobic creators, and I'm so angry about it.
That's disappointing. I'm sorry.
But she was the very first LGBTQ plus superhero ever on screen, like in TV and movies.
That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were some in comics before. They started introducing characters in the 80s, I believe. But as for TV, Sarah Lance in 2014 became the first on screen. So that was a very important, very big deal.
Yeah.
So with this character, she's seen in flashbacks in season 1, but in season 2, it's revealed that she's not dead. So there's a lot of experience, and she's experiencing this, and she starts dating the guy that she was dating before. But then someone shows up from her past, from the League of Assassins, where she was with when people thought she was dead. And it's this woman named Nisa, and they kiss and reveal that Sarah likes both men and women. And that happened in season 2, episode 13, and that was in 2014. She became the first LGBT plus character. This character has had some problems because she's the first, and they were not super good at it yet.
Yeah.
That happens sometimes.
Yeah.
There's a learning curve.
So in season 2 of Arrow is when it's found out that she's bisexual. It is not explicitly stated that she is bisexual until season 2 of Legends of Tomorrow, which is happening at the same time as season 5 of Arrow. So it's 4 years later before it's explicitly stated.
But she's dating both men and women.
She's dating both men and women.
So they're just not putting a label on that for a while.
They're just not putting a label. And it wasn't her that stated that she was bisexual.
Oh.
A lot of people were very concerned about bisexual erasure in the first season of Legends of Tomorrow as well, because she only dated women and it was never explicitly stated either way. So they thought with the move to the new show that they were just going to erase that part of her character entirely.
Okay.
So there's a lot of pushback for that. She was great, and because of her, I figured out what bisexuality was, and that I was in fact bisexual, which was very important. Katie Lotz has disappointed a lot of people, and I don't understand why actors decide to portray characters that are part of the LGBT plus community if they don't support the LGBTQ plus community wholeheartedly.
I wish I had an answer, or I could just be like, this is why, but no, I can't tell you. I really can't.
No.
Yeah, I don't know why people have to be such trash sometimes, because that's just so sad, because it's such an important character to you that, why can't you respect your character as much as your fans respect your character and think she's important? But people are like that sometimes.
But I also want to talk about 2 characters in that franchise that are done so much better. And so much better.
Yeah, okay, good.
Let's bring this back up.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about Kylie Lee again because she's amazing and I love her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's on Supergirl, which is another part of the franchise thing. And in season 2, episode 6, she comes out as a lesbian to her sister, and we see her grow and change with that sexuality throughout the show. When it aired in 2017, people described it as the most authentic coming out story that they've seen on TV, and they thought it was really great. Since then, like Kyler has said, that the reason she was able to make that scene so authentic is because she feels some of the same things, and like she has not explicitly stated her sexuality, but she considers herself a part of the LGBT plus community.
Welcome. Yeah, she's she's here then. If she says that she's one of us, then welcome.
Exactly. I love it so much, and just taking this moment to reiterate that do not owe anyone an explanation or definition of your sexuality or gender in any way.
Especially celebrities, but everybody else as well.
Everybody else as well.
And when celebrities do come out as an undefined sexuality or gender, it's not on us to assign them a label.
Yeah.
They can choose to provide us with a label at their own time if they wish, but it's not mandatory.
Yeah.
Seen that happen a couple of times recently.
Yeah, it's been rough. Just wanna love people? Great, love you too. So, while not playing the character of Alex Danvers on this screen, she is doing so many things in advocating for the LGBTQ plus community. Her and her husband Nathan West and their friend Angelo Lagdomeo
started
killing it.
started a community called Create Change, where they hope to inspire people to like share their stories and encourage people to like make change where the person sees that they need to, and just start conversations about that. And they also donate to like a number of different organizations, which is super great. And they've also recently started supporting this new web series that I found out because of this research called BIFL, which is a series about intersectionality grounded in meaningful real-life situations both behind and in front of the camera, which I think is so cool. It's a web series that I'm going to attempt to watch.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That sounds great.
And the other character or person that I want to talk about is Nicole Maines. She is a transgender woman who plays the first transgender superhero on TV.
When did all of this happen? Oh my goodness.
She's also on Supergirl. Supergirl's killing it.
I'm missing a lot of stuff by sticking to the MCU.
Yeah, no, the MCU is
far behind, apparently.
There has been no characters on the movie screen, as I can find, of either companies that are, like, confirmed LGBT+. Until, like, yesterday. When
literally yesterday. Literally this week that happened.
But yeah, Nicole Maines is amazing. She is very new to acting, but she is most known, other than her role on Supergirl, for her part in the court case, Doe versus Regional School Unit 26, when she was a teenager. So, Nicole was, on paper, given the name Susan Doe to protect her identity since she was a minor, and she sued her school for not allowing her access to the female restroom. And it was the first time that a state school ruled that denying a transgender student access to the bathroom consistent with their gender identity is unlawful in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big...
She's pretty awesome.
That's a big case.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so that was Nicole Maines.
It's crazy that she's this actress, and then there's... Yeah, that's so amazing. Something to have done. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's since had a book written about her, and she's participated in the Trans List documentary, and she has had like a few other roles where she has brought trans female gender roles to life before she got the role on Supergirl, and she's 23 years old at the moment.
Holy man.
Wow. I love her so much.
Freaking bow down. What a life already. That's crazy.
I hope that we get another like 50 or 60 years of that from her, because she's really just knocking things out left and right.
She's doing amazing. I love her so much. But yeah, those were the three. So.
Those were all great.
Yes, that was amazing. I love that. I love that Supergirl is such an awesome show for that. There's so much like representation, and they don't seem to be like, as someone who doesn't watch it, they don't seem to be afraid to like try things that haven't been done before, or like represent people that aren't represented. So that's really amazing.
Because like I was doing all of this research on LGBTQ stuff. Did you guys know that Friends was the first show to depict a lesbian wedding.
I didn't know that.
Like the very first ever lesbian TV wedding was Carol and Susan on Friends.
Yeah.
Do you know what year that is off the top of your head?
I want to say 1996 or 97.
Yeah, I was going to go 97, so somewhere around there.
It was in season 1, if I remember correctly.
They hired extra people to deal with the complaints that they expected, and they got 3 letters.
Which is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. It was not aired in some places, though.
Yeah.
Some places did refuse to air it.
That's why not.
Apparently, we were off. It was season 2.
Okay.
So it was 1996.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Like, literally not that long before any of us were born.
Literally. Literally. That just blew my mind. Yeah. That's crazy.
I mean, also a crazy thing to do in season 2. Like, I know Friends was a huge phenomenon, but it was still season 2. Like, that was very early on in their run.
Yeah.
It was still becoming a phenomenon at that point. That was a risky thing to do, I guess, probably back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not here to talk about Friends, though.
That would have been a great segue, though.
Yeah. I mean, Carol and Susan just, like, aren't really featured enough, or else, like, I would.
Yeah.
Plus, I also really want to do a trans character, so I'm going to be talking about Casey Parker from Grey's Anatomy.
I love Casey.
Yeah, same.
Cute. So Casey first appeared in season 14, episode 4, Ain't That a Cake and Head, and before I even get into all of the things that Casey's done since then, shout out to fandom.com, Grey's Wiki, because they had a really great record of pretty much any time Casey's been in an episode ever, and like what he did while he was there.
Fandom.com always comes through.
Running this podcast, and running my other podcasts now as well. Like,
yes.
Fandom.com could not survive without them. I didn't have to rewatch a single episode that I didn't want to. Like, I only rewatch scenes that I wanted to watch again because I didn't I could just find the information from every instance that he was on the screen.
Incredible.
So in his very first episode, he was interviewing for an intern position at Graceland Memorial, and we found out that he had served 2 tours of duty in the Air Force in cybersecurity. And then he was seen but wasn't really memorable in a couple of more appearances after that as an intern. Like, as a new intern, he was just kind of like mixed in with the interns. Until season 14, episode 9, which is 1-800-799-7233, which is the domestic abuse hotline. And in that episode, the hospital is hacked by a cyber attacker, and Casey proves himself to be super useful by frying the door of the blood bank with a defibrillator. And so Dr. Bailey asks if he can help and maintain care in the hospital in any other ways. And Casey tells him that he'll help as much as he can, but he has a conviction for hacking a federal server, so he can't, like, go and talk to the FBI himself. He can just tell her what to tell the FBI. Bailey's concerned because that wasn't in his records, and he's new at this job as a doctor and a surgeon. And she asked if his criminal activity involved sex, children, or drugs, which he says no to all of the above. And tells her that he hacked the DMV because his new license was taking too long. And then Bailey and Casey conspire to regain control of the hospital against the wishes of the FBI because the FBI wants to make an arrest, but Bailey and Casey want to get the control of the hospital back so that they don't accidentally let anybody die.
Very important.
Yeah, I mean, it's also important to catch people who are running cyber hacks on hospitals and things. It's important to catch those people as well, but not at the expense of people living or dying in real time. But that's a whole moral issue. And then Casey tells Bailey that the real reason that he hacked the DMV was because his old license referred to him as female and they wouldn't change it. And he tells her that he's a proud trans man, but he likes for other people to get to know who he is as a person before they know about his private medical history. And then Casey was around for a few more episodes, continuing his surgical education and assisting the residents and attendings, doing his trauma certification, and he really just proves in the trauma certification that he's the most resourceful of the interns. April Kepner is helping to run the trauma certification, and she's taking a lot of personal issues out on the interns, so he has her paged elsewhere in the hospital because she's the source of the most harm to their hypothetical patients. So she just removes her from the situation, which no one else thought to do.
Yeah.
He gets along really well with Owen and Teddy because of his past military experience, because they also have past military experience. I'm sure he would get along with April if she wasn't going through so many personal crises in the first few months that he was around.
Yeah,
true.
He's the first person Teddy goes to when she's experiencing a potential pregnancy complication twice. He has a girlfriend who he was showing pictures of to Cece the matchmaker while he was one of her doctors, but we don't really know anything about her, so we just assume that they're fine and that she is the gorgeous human being I'm sure that he deserves. Because we really just don't know anything about her. And then in season 16, episode 9, Let's All Go to the Bar, he was at Emerald City Bar with some of the other interns when a car lost control and drove through the wall. And in station 19, season 3, episode 1, the occupants of the bar are still all trapped, and Casey was acting really confused. He thought a bombing had occurred. He asked if they were in the green zone. Jackson examined them and saw he had like a hematoma, but it didn't look very serious, so he just kind of like told him to lay down. And when they were able to get out of the bar, Casey, Levi, and Nico were all able to still walk, so they all walked across the street to the hospital to get checked out. And then in Grey's Anatomy season 16, episode 10, Help Me Through the Night, Casey continued to be confused and think that there was a bombing, and while Teddy and Amelia are treating him, Amelia thinks that he's having a PTSD episode, which Teddy says all soldiers have PTSD, and his is just being exacerbated by the contusion from the crash. Like, he just hit his head, and that's why he's having this, like, long episode of PTSD. Mm-hmm. Casey disappeared before they got him up to the neuro ICU, and Teddy and Amelia had to go looking for him, and they eventually found him in the hyperbaric chamber, and Teddy calms him down and brings him out of the hyperbaric chamber. And later he's seen with his friends as they recover from their injuries, but he still leaves the hospital to go to a facility that specializes in wounded veterans. He's the first transgender doctor on Grey's Anatomy and was portrayed by Alex Blue Davis, who is a trans man in real life. He was intentionally cast for the part after Christopher Noff, the showrunner, decided she wanted to tell the story of a trans veteran following then President Donald Trump's proposed ban on transgender people serving in the military. And I had this article from the Hollywood Reporter, and I just want to include a couple of quotes. So there's this one from Alex Blue Davis about Casey's moment of disclosure with Dr. Bailey. He said, "I cried at the table read. It was very moving for me. I've been waiting for a moment like this on TV my whole life. I'm so honored I got to say that line on TV because it's a long time coming." And then I had an additional quote from Christopher Noff, who is the showrunner in Grey's Anatomy, and who was the one who wanted his storyline. She said, "Realizing that a trans person is like any other person with a journey in this lifetime, they're not victims, villains, weird, or wrong. They're none of the things people believe when they support laws like the one that Trump put forward. My goal as a storyteller was to help illuminate that experience as an ally. I reached out to GLAAD for help in doing that because I'm only an ally and not a member of the LGBTQ community. They were more than happy to help." So she really worked a lot with GLAAD and with actual trans people when she was creating the storyline, and like the actual like line that he was a proud trans man, but he wants people to get to know him before they learn his medical history. Like, that was written and rewritten a bunch of times to get it exactly right. And like, she's like, "That's not my experience, so I need to listen to the people whose experience it is," which we've said more than once on this podcast is so important when you're telling stories.
So important. That's amazing that she did that and leaned so heavily on the people that she was actually trying to do good for and represent.
Well, I guess we're on to ender segments then.
Yeah, I guess so.
So we're going to start off with Love It or Lose It, which is one thing you loved and one thing you'd rather get rid of. So who has a Love It to start?
I didn't prepare anything. So I would say I love the really fun parts of Pride Month that are like hearing maybe stories that that I specifically wouldn't maybe usually hear. I mean, even though it's kind of gross. Well, let's say that for my Lose It. The grossness of sometimes not so, I don't want to say forthcoming, like businesses that pretend to be accepting when they're not. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Like, lots of businesses and like companies around this time pretend to be really accepting when like June comes around, when sometimes they're not. And they're on the rest of the year, they just want to slap pride colors on their logo and call it welcoming, call it
rainbow capitalism.
Exactly. So I'll say that for my Lose It, and Love It is just like me specifically as someone who's not part of the LGBTQIA plus community. I love Pride Month and getting to hear all these stories that I might not have usually gotten to hear about.
Incredible.
Yeah,
we love that. I love everything you just said.
Good.
Incredible. My Love It is just having like better representation on screen and like having people advocating for the LGBTQ plus community and just seeing that is really great. And my Lose It is just people who are unaccepting and people who think it's okay to portray LGBTQ plus community without supporting all the members of that community.
So valid.
Yes.
I'm gonna do my Lose It first because my Lose It is a big old bummer. So
okay.
I want an opportunity to have a Love It after that because my Lose It is pretty dark. It's so disheartening how long it's taken to make progress both on screen and in other areas of life. It's been over 50. It's been 52 years since the Stonewall Uprising, this Pride Month, and it seems like it still takes no effort at all to slide back on all of those things. Like, I feel like we've undone more in 2021 so far. We're only 6 months in than we did collectively in like 20 years before that, you know? It just feels like it's takes so much effort to make progress and absolutely no effort to undo it. And things just have not felt good the last like 2 years, especially for trans people. I've really gotten more aware of the trans community and the different struggles they're fighting in different parts of the world. The UK and the US are both pretty actively targeting the trans community, and it's been really horrible, so I don't like that at all. But my love it is more specific to television representation, and it's that people aren't just tolerating queer characters and queer storylines, but they're demanding them and they're loving them. They're saying that they don't want shows if they don't have them. People don't want shows about 6 straight people. That's not the reality of life and the reality of life experience. So I'm really glad that people want these characters and they love these characters.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
So then our next segment is randomized rankings, where we choose 5 main characters at random and rank them. Obviously, we didn't even talk about 5 people today. I mean, we kind of did by the end because Moira did 3, like a trooper.
Just add more to her pile.
But we're still gonna skip the rankings this week.
Yeah, they're all number 1 spots. Every one of them.
Yeah, everybody. And our last segment is I Would Name My Kid That, which is the best baby names inspired by the media. Was anybody inspired this week?
Just scrolling back through my notes, I don't think I was particularly. Nothing really caught my heart, I guess you could say, for a baby name. Just generally, I think picking non-gender specific names, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is something KJ talks about a lot.
And I think just degendering names that have traditionally had gender as well.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. That's just, I thought I had nothing to do with anything specific just now, but yeah.
I like the name Casey quite a bit. I don't have like super strong feelings for it, but I like it.
Yeah.
And as I say so many times, and you have to also, like, as a parent, I think now, also recognize that if you are giving your child a gendered name, or even if you're giving them a non-gendered name, if your child discloses to you that their gender identity doesn't match their assigned gender at birth, then they might want to change their name even if their name is already gender neutral.
Yeah, totally.
There can be something powerful in changing your name and in getting that new name, and I don't really have that experience personally, but from what I've seen from other people in the trans community and in the non-binary community, there can be something powerful about doing that. So, as a parent, even if you do give your child a gender neutral name, just keep in mind that your child might still want to change it.
Yeah.
Or, even if your child does completely, sometimes your kid just doesn't like the name you picked. It doesn't suit them.
Yeah.
Even if
it's totally fine.
Even if the name does suit their gender identity, it just doesn't suit them as a person, and that's okay.
Yeah, totally.
Normalize changing your name if you don't like it, because it's yours.
Yeah, and you have to live with it forever, so
yeah,
exactly. You should definitely like it.
I really like the name Nicole.
That's cute.
Yeah, that is cute.
More specifically like Mia, which is the character. I really like the name Mia.
Mia is cute. I like that. Does anyone else have any other recommendations or anything else that they want to say before we totally wrap up for the week?
I don't think so. Just whoever you are and whatever you identify as, we love and appreciate you. And thank you for listening to this. Yes. We appreciate it.
I agree.
Yeah, same. Happy Pride Month, everybody.
Yay!
All right, so that was our episode for this week. You've been listening to the Series of Opinions podcast. Let us know what you thought about this week's episode. Leave us a review, because that really helps us out. Or get in contact with us on our social media. You can email us at the Series of Opinions pod at gmail.com, or you can contact us on Tumblr and Instagram at Series of Opinions pod, or you can tweet at us at Series of Opinion with no S on Twitter. And you can find me at Life Messes with KJ on everything.
You can find me at Miss Faith Ann on everything, and at Faith Ann Art for all of my art.
And you can find me at Moira_Frisk on everything.
And next week we're talking about...
Oh yeah, right. Next week we're doing a spotlight on Once Upon a Time, and specifically on modern fairy tales. The fact that I didn't immediately know it at the top of my head is not a reflection on my excitement.
This episode was written, produced, and recorded by us. It was edited by me, editing KJ, and thank you to Faith Ebert for our logo.
Thanks so much for listening.
Bye!
Bye!